Today we're going to use balanced chemical equations to solve for unknown quantities. This is an important skill going from chemistry 11, let's say, to chemistry 12, and especially if you're going to go on and take chemistry in university, this is something that you absolutely have to master. So here's a sample question. We'll work through it together, and hopefully this will allow you to do questions at home. 13.01 grams of aluminum react with oxygen to form aluminum oxide. How much product is formed? That's the question. Step 1 to answer the question is to write a balanced chemical equation. So let's do that. Aluminum plus oxygen. Remember that oxygen is a diatomic, so we'll write it as O2. And that's going to give us aluminum oxide. Now, if you're not good at writing chemical formulas of ionic compounds or covalent compounds, then you need to go back and review that. But the chemical formula for aluminum oxide would be Al2O3. Alright, so there's our equation, but it's not balanced yet. So now we have to balance it, and the rules for balancing are fairly straightforward in these kind of typical equations. First of all, you balance the metals. So on one side here, the reactant side, we have 1 aluminum. On the product side, we have 2 aluminum. So I'm going to put a 2 over here next to this. And over here, we have 3 oxygens. And we have 2 on the reactant side. Well, in order to get this to balance out, the only thing I can multiply those 2 oxygens by to get 3 would be 1.5. Okay, but in a chemical reaction, we don't like to leave those decimals. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to multiply everything by 2. So 2 for aluminum would become 4. The 1.5 in front of the oxygen would become 3, which is a whole number. And the 1 that's assumed in front of the aluminum oxide would become a 2. Alright, so I'm just going to rewrite this equation over here. And it would be 2 the aluminum would become 4 Al plus 3O2 yields 2 aluminum oxides. Okay, so there's our balanced chemical equation. I don't need this one anymore. There's our balanced chemical equation. Alright, now we're going to use that balanced chemical equation to solve this problem. Okay, so step 1, balanced chemical equation. Let's talk about step 2. Step 2 is to write down what we've been given in the question, and then we kind of have to figure out a plan of action. How are we going to solve this problem? So as we said before, we have 4 aluminums plus 3 O2s yields 2 aluminum oxides. Okay, and what we've been given for this question is that the mass of aluminum is equal to 13.01 grams. That's what we know. When you look at a balanced chemical equation, you can't relate the mass of one thing directly to the mass of another. Okay, but you can relate the mole values of one thing to the mole values of another. So if I know how many moles of aluminum I have, then I can figure out how many moles of aluminum oxide I have. Once I figure that out, then I can change it into grams, which is what the question is asking for. So how do I find moles of aluminum given the mass? Well, here's how I would go about doing that. I have 13.01 grams of aluminum. I would use a conversion factor, or you can use mass divided by molar mass. It's another way to do it. Conversion factor here. And 1 mole of aluminum is equal to 26.98 grams. My grams cancel out. I should be left with moles. And notice here in the question I was given 4 significant figures. So my answer here should also have 4 significant figures. So 13.01 divided by 26.98 is equal to 0.4822. And that should be moles. 0.4822 mole. Okay? So the balanced chemical equation says for every 4 moles of aluminum, I need 3 moles of oxygen to make 2 moles of aluminum oxide. That's what the equation says. I don't have 4 moles of aluminum. In fact, I only have 0.4822 moles of aluminum. So now I have to figure out how much aluminum oxide that 0.4822 moles of aluminum will get me. Alright, so step 3 is going to be to use my moles of the known substance to find out how many moles of the unknown substance I can make, or that I need, depending on the question. Alright, so 0.4822 moles Al, which is what I calculated, right, is going to go through another change here, another conversion. And according to my balanced chemical equation, for every 4 moles of Al, sorry about the, I'm just going to try that again here. So 0.4822 moles of Al, 4. Okay, so 4 moles of Al is actually equal to 2 moles of aluminum oxide. And again, I didn't make my bracket big enough there. So basically, it doesn't matter. I didn't make my bracket big enough, but that's going to equal. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide. My moles of aluminum are going to cancel, divide by 4, and I'm going to multiply by 2, and that should give me moles of aluminum oxide, according to my balanced chemical equation. So 0.4822 divided by 4, multiplied by 2, I get 0.2411 moles of Al2O3. That's how many moles I have. Of course, the question didn't ask for moles, so step 4 in this case is to convert the moles of the unknown substance to grams of the unknown substance. And of course, you have to be able to do the molar mass to be able to do that. So we had 0.2411, and again, there's my 4 significant figures, moles of Al2O3. I'm going to use a conversion factor here. And 1 mole of aluminum oxide, I'm going to have 101.96 grams. Okay, so in my calculator, I'm going to type in 0.2411. I'm going to multiply that by 101.96. And I'm going to have an answer, and I'm going to write my answer again to 4 significant figures. So my final answer was 24.58 grams. And that would be of aluminum oxide. Right, and those are the 4 steps in solving for an unknown substance using a balanced, key there is balanced, it's got to be balanced, using a balanced chemical equation.